Hey family, how y'all doing? How y'all doing today, family? Welcome to Daily Dose of Wisdom. Hope y'all having a good day. Today we're going to do our part 3 of 5 of our Coping with Grief and Loss series. Okay, so to start off, we're going to talk about the difference between sudden and predictable loss. Okay, so let's start off with sudden loss, right? So sudden loss, just like the word states, it's a shocking loss, right? And this could be due to crimes, accidents, or suicides, right? So it's things like that that are very, very traumatic in the moment, where pretty much there's no way to prepare for it. Okay, they can also challenge your sense of security and confidence in the predictability of life, right? Because at times we feel like we're in control of most things when really we're not, right? Also, you may experience symptoms such as sleep disturbances, nightmares, distressing thoughts, depressed mood, social isolation, or like severe anxiety, right? So these would be the effects of sudden loss. Then when we move on to the other end of predictable loss, right? So predictable loss, this is something that is due to a terminal illness, right? So you have someone, you know, someone that has a terminal illness, that's told that they will not live, that's probably in their end stage, right? So what this does is it allows for some time for you to prepare for the loss. But however, what happens is that it now creates two layers of grief, right? Because now, while this person's going through this terminal illness, suffering before your eyes, you're grieving that process. And once they eventually die, that's another grieving process in and of itself. Okay, because what happens is the grief is then related to the anticipation of the loss, right? And compared to like the grief related to the loss itself, right? So kind of like how I mentioned, dealing with them and being with them while they're sick, knowing that the end will come, and then when they actually die, right? So kind of think back for yourself on whether you've experienced either sudden loss or predictable loss, and kind of like how you felt right through that process, and if some of those symptoms or some of those experiences kind of linger with you, or brings you to memory of an event like that. Okay, so sudden and predictable loss, right? Now let's move into how long does grief last, right? At times we want to determine for ourselves how long we'll grieve, right? But however, we need to be reminded that the length of the grieving process is different for everyone, right? There's no predictable schedule for it. Although it can be quite painful at times, the grief process should not be rushed, right? So other people shouldn't be telling you how long you should be grieving. Other people shouldn't be judging you for how long you are grieving, right? There is no predictable time frame. And also, it is important to be patient with yourself as you experience, the different reactions that you're having to the loss. With time, with support, things do generally get better, right? However, it is normal, right, for at certain times, certain seasons, certain dates. Basically, you have certain triggers, right, that come up along the way that brings you back right to that moment, to that grieving process, that reminds you of that person, right? That kind of stirs up a little pain within you, right? Those would be your triggers, right? And that's normal, and that happens. Okay, also, what's important in regards to how long grief lasts while you're going through the grieving process, it's important for you to take care of yourself, right? Taking care of yourself means seeking support. It means acknowledging your feelings, right? And not trying to fight it, not trying to be like kind of like deny it, or not trying to make it seem like it's not normal, okay? And in doing these things, what it does, it helps you to cope, right? It helps you to cope, to go through the process, and to make it to the other side. Okay. So keep that in mind. And you can kind of think back and see how long it took you to kind of go through the grieving process of a lost loved one. Okay. And when we talk about a healing process, right, we need to understand that it's not something that's linear, right? I kind of mentioned that back when we spoke about the stages of grief, where I said that You could start off being in denial, or you could start off with accepting, or you could start off with anger and move on to another step, right? It's not something like A, B, C, D. It's different for each and every one of us, right? And what happens usually is that you're going to experience it more in a way of like cycles, right? Where it's like up and down, up and down. One day you're okay, next day you're back crying, tearful, like uncontrollable, and the next day you're kind of okay. So it's kind of like that cycle motion, the process sort of goes through, right? And again, that might look different for each and every one of us, right? For someone it might be a month they're up, or 3 months they're down, right? But it's different for each and every one of us. um and in going through these cycles, right, it's important to kind of look at things, right, and to understand that you are making progress, right? Because you might think up and down, up and down, up and down. What is really happening? But you are making progress, right? Because you're going through the motions, you're going through the process, right? And so you're making progress just in doing that. And it's important to be patient. Allow yourself to have these feelings, right? They're normal feelings, they're understandable. You must go through it, because what happens when you suppress these feelings, when you do not seek the appropriate help, right? When you do not know the appropriate coping mechanisms to use, they will express themselves. They will like bleed out in your life in the most negative ways, which then affects your daily life, where you're not able to be sufficient, right? Or take care of yourself. And we don't want to get to that point. At that point, then, you cause yourself more harm, right? While still grieving, because the actual process has not started in a healthy way. Okay. And what happens is at times you might feel stuck, right? So if you feel stuck, talking to a counselor, going to therapy, talking to someone talking to someone in your church, right? Or wherever, um, that's supportive, that can listen out, will help you, right? Kind of move forward in the healing process. Do not feel like you're alone. You're never alone. Um, that's one thing we all should be reminded of in this world. Billions and billions of people. So know that you're never alone. And if you need support, reach out to the ones closest to you. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about grief and culture, right? And this is a big one because I feel like this one, many people deny or are not aware of, or do not understand how it works, right? So grieving and culture goes two in one, right? Because culture is our makeup, culture is our belief system, culture is our how we grew up, how we see the world, right? And grief happens to each and every one of us as well, right? So your cultural background can affect how you understand and approach the grieving process, right? So like for example, some cultures anticipate a time to grieve and have developed rituals to help people through the grieving process, right? Whereas other cultures, it's kind of like something that's individualistic, right? There might be certain ceremonies, right, that acknowledges the pain of the loss, right, while also offering social support and a reaffirmation of life, right? You may not be aware of your own cultural background and how it affects your grieving process. So it's good to take a minute and to kind of think back. Think about your childhood. Think about how you grew up. Think about your culture and kind of like what are the belief systems within your culture regarding grief, regarding loss, right? And then how do you then define that for yourself? What do you take from it? What do you leave out? Um, and how can it help you through that process in a positive and healthy way? Okay. So, for example, in certain cultures, talking with family and friends, talking to ministers is one way that strengthens kind of like your awareness, right? Um, Also, kind of like going within yourself, right? To see how culture in general has affected you and what you've taken from it moving forward, right? But it's important to kind of look back, to think back, because what happens, and if we're not aware of that is happening, we're moving blindly. We're not knowing why we do certain things we do. And so, really thinking back about that and making that connection will help you process, will help you move forward, and will give you certain tools right? Certain tools, if they're healthy, to move forward in the process. Okay, so that's very, very important. So kind of think about your culture and how, right, that affects your grieving process and what you've learned from it. Okay. All right. So then now we're going to talk about ways to cope with grief, right? We touched upon that a little bit. So let's talk quickly a little bit more about certain ways, right? Let's talk about some more ways that we're coping with grief. We spoke about talking to family and friends, right? Seeking counseling or therapy, reading poetry, reading books could be a way, right? To kind of escape the current moment, to kind of um, think or read about others' plight, to kind of create this connection with you where you do not feel alone, right? Because others have gone through the grieving process or others are going through it. And you get to learn what they've learned and you get to learn some skills and tips on how you, right, can make sure you're grieving in a healthy way. You can engage in social activities. And one thing I would say about that is it's not being selfish, right? Others might look at you and say, oh, look at you, you're doing this, that, and that person just died. No, this is a way that you're coping with your grief, engaging in social activities to help keep you sane, to help keep you whole, to help keep you moving, right, in your day to day. Exercising is a way, right? We know when we exercise, it releases endorphins within our bodies, which is a mood, like enhances your mood. And so that's also a positive way to cope with grief and loss. Because when we are in a kind of like an upbeat or regular mood, we're able to kind of think more clearly, right? Compared to when we're in deep anger, deep sadness, all we could think of is anger and sadness and things that might not suit us or help us, right? Move forward. And then another way could be eating healthy, right? Good foods. We know that what the benefits of eating healthy is for us, mind, body, and soul. And so holding on to that and keeping that is also important. And it will help you help you cope with the grief. Okay, seeking spiritual support. Right, we spoke about that. Reaching out to someone you know that can kind of uplift you, support you, and help you through that process. Praying could be another way to cope with grief, right? Again, a reminder that you're not alone, right? A reminder that you're loved. Taking time to relax, joining a support group, right? If you're not someone who doesn't do the individual counseling piece or don't like it much, do a support group, right? Those can really help you gain insight and perspective, and again, makes you feel connected instead of isolated while you're going through your grief. Okay, listening to music can be a way to kind of tune out, to sharpen, to readjust, right, your emotions at the moment, to strengthen you to keep moving forward, right? Being patient with yourself. Again, patience, patience, patience is important. Do not deny yourself the ability, the need to process and heal from your grief. Very, very important. Because again, you will disrupt the natural pattern of life, the natural pattern of your mental and emotional being in regards to loss, and cause more harm down the line. So be patient with yourself. Take your time. Do not rush the process. Let yourself grieve. That is the end all be all. You have to go through the process. It's best you go through it in a healthy, positive way, encouraging way, supportive way. And so let yourself feel the grief so that at the end, as time goes on, you can grow stronger from that experience. You can be reminded of all the memories, the positivity, the lessons you learned, right? The effects, say, that person had in your life in a positive way down the line. So let yourself grieve. All right. So thank you so much, family, for joining me. Again, you guys can write in the comments. Please subscribe, like, share to someone you know who may benefit from this. And also, remember, guys, as you're going through the grieving process, a lot of the experiences that you have and effects, they're normal. All right. So thank you, family, for joining me today. See you next time on the part 4. Have a great day.